Iceberg charts the most horrifying events ever caught on camera. From a towering structure that collapsed, claiming countless lives, to a relentless current that swept 5 people to their doom. We begin at the tip of the iceberg, but as we descend, the stories grow darker, more unsettling with each chilling layer. Level 1. Patrol. In 2019, in the Muthanga Wildlife Sanctuary in India, 2 men on a motorcycle faced a terrifying ordeal. The 2 Indian men, members of the Department of Forestry, were filming the beautiful scenery while patrolling the area when they encountered something they didn't expect to be so close. Reports of a tiger in the region had reached the forest officials in the days prior, and their patrol was to locate it. While filming, a bright orange tiger suddenly emerged from the trees, dangerously close. The tiger appeared angry or hungry and began chasing the motorcycle at full speed, giving the men no time to react. All they felt was sheer terror. Even as they sped up, the tiger got close enough that it seemed it might catch them. The forest officials were patrolling on the motorcycle due to reports of a tiger sighting in the area. The motorcycle was traveling at about 60 kilometers per hour, while an adult male tiger can reach speeds of up to 65 kilometers per hour. But after a few seconds, the tiger veered slightly off course and disappeared back into the jungle. Strange night in the couple's home. In 2022, a video recorded by a security camera installed inside a home captures profoundly strange and unbelievable events during a quiet night. The footage begins with a young woman lying asleep on a couch. In front of her, a small tricycle on the floor suddenly starts moving, not a slight ordinary movement, but a rapid back and forth motion, seemingly controlled by a significant yet invisible force. This is only the beginning of the ordeal, unnoticed by the sleeping woman. Moments later, an even more startling event occurs. The couch she's lying on lifts from the bottom up, raising her with it. The movement is so intense that it jolts her awake. Overcome with fear and panic, she bolts to another room without a moment's hesitation. Not even glancing back to explain what happened to her companion. Shortly after, she returns to the living room with a young man who appears to be her brother or partner. Her hands trembling from stress and fear, she recounts the incident. The man, however, seems unconvinced, almost dismissive of her story. He urges her to calm down and go to another room to rest, then lies on the couch himself, as if to prove there's no danger or anything unusual present. After a while, the man falls into a relatively deep sleep, and nothing notable happens until a creature appears behind the half-open window. The figure is both human-like and not, raising questions in the viewer's mind. Even stranger than the creature's appearance is what happens to the man at the same moment. As the creature nears the window, the man's body is suddenly thrown, as if struck by a heavy shock, convulsing violently. The timing suggests a connection between the creature's presence and the event. The night doesn't end easily, as bizarre occurrences continue in a chain. The creature vanishes from the window, but moments later, a tablecloth moves and falls to the floor. Then, the same thing that happened to the couch with the woman occurs again, throwing the man to the ground. Upon waking, he immediately runs to a room in terror, returning with a stick in hand to defend himself if needed. He turns on the light and searches for anything suspicious but finds nothing. He even opens the door and checks outside, detecting no threat. Finally, he approaches the window, where the most terrifying confrontation unfolds. In a split second, the creature reappears at the window, sending the man reeling back several meters in sheer horror before he flees in a panic. The video ends after a few seconds, with the window repeatedly opening and closing, leaving all questions about the creature that extraordinary night, and the couple's fate unanswered. Strange man at the door. On Saturday, January 5, 2019, an odd and disturbing incident occurred at a home in Salinas, California, USA, recorded by a doorbell camera. Roberto Daniel Arroyo, a 33-year-old man with a criminal history, was caught licking the doorbell for an astonishing 3 hours. The video, which went viral, showed him repeatedly licking the device, pausing occasionally to rest, and making unsettling eye contact with the camera. His motive remains unclear, leaving questions about what message he intended for the homeowners. The family's parents were not home, but their children were asleep inside, unaware of the man's presence, and fortunately unharmed. Arroyo also reportedly urinated in the garden and wandered the front yards of other nearby homes. While no one was physically hurt, his bizarre and repulsive behavior was deeply unsettling, capable of disturbing any viewer. Level 2. Dangerous dogs. On the morning of November 2, 2020, in Arizona, Brooklyn Quarry, a vibrant 23-year-old known as a model Instagram had come to visit her cousin. They were planning a simple family gathering. Brooklyn, always full of energy and smiles on social media, entered her cousin's home that day with her usual enthusiasm. But she wouldn't leave Arizona the same way. Her cousin owned a pit bull, which Brooklyn had met before without any issues. That day, she was playing with the dog when suddenly, without warning, the pit bull attacked her. The moment was like a nightmare. No one expected it. The dog lunged at Brooklyn's face with ferocity, tearing off her upper lip and part of her facial skin in a horrific instant. The pain and shock paralyzed her. Those present finally managed to pull the dog away, but it was too late. The damage was severe. Brooklyn later said in interviews that the moment felt like a horror movie, and she still struggles to believe it happened. She was rushed to the hospital, where doctors confirmed that her upper lip and part of her facial tissue were completely destroyed.
He was like hanging off of my mouth, literally from here to here, ripped off completely.
A plastic surgeon later performed multiple reconstructive surgeries, using skin and nerves from Brooklyn's arm to create a new lip. She has undergone 6 surgeries so far and is scheduled for another. Now, after all this hardship, she's beginning to smile again. A chase with a tragic twist. On February 18, 2023, around 9 p.m., a tragic and horrifying incident unfolded in Larimer County, Colorado, USA. A police officer, Lorenzo Lujan, stopped the vehicle of a 28-year-old man, Brent Allen Thompson, on a busy highway due to expired license plates. When the officer asked for Thompson's name and details, he provided a fake name.
So, did you give me the right name?
Yeah.
What's your name?
Jacob Todd Jones.
Okay. Why don't you give me the right name?
It is the right name.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Brent, I know.
Jacob Jones, Thompson of Loveland, identified himself as Jacob Jones, but the deputy, who was joined by a partner at the scene, quickly discovered that he gave a fake name. The officer immediately realized the name was false and questioned Thompson about why he was hiding his true identity. Initially, Thompson denied the deception, insisting he had given his real name. But when the officer, unconvinced, moved to arrest him, Thompson suddenly bolted before the officer could finish his sentence. Officer Lujan chased him at full speed, repeatedly shouting for Thompson to stop or face being tased with an electric shock.
Stop being tased! Stop!
Ignoring the warnings, Thompson leapt over a guardrail, entering another lane of the highway. The situation reached its peak of intensity and horror at this moment. As Thompson crossed the highway, Lou Hyun fired his taser, causing Thompson to collapse onto the ground. Before the officer could approach to handcuff him, a speeding SUV struck Thompson and drove off, leaving him in critical condition. Stunned, Lou Hyun approached Thompson, joined by other officers calling out to him, but they noticed his head was bleeding and he was groaning in pain. After handcuffing him, they rushed him to a hospital, but despite their efforts, doctors could not save him, and Thompson succumbed to his injuries. Lou Hyun, who was working overtime, explained that he intended to detain Thompson to prevent him from harming himself or other drivers on the highway. However, it was determined that his delay in using the taser at the appropriate moment was a clear lapse in judgment. Uyan, who was working overtime, told investigators he wanted to detain Thompson so he did not pose a threat to himself or drivers on the interstate. However, the letter noted that he looked for approaching vehicles about 20 seconds before deploying the taser, but not right before using it about 15 seconds later, calling that a clear lapse in judgment. Despite this, Lou Hyun was not convicted of murder. Regardless of the legal outcome, Brent Allen Thompson would never return to his family. Ultimately, his family reached a $5 million settlement for his death. Family of man run over by SUV on I-25 after Larimer County deputy tased him reaches $5 million settlement. Revenge. At 9:30 p.m. on March 16, 1984, at Baton Rouge Metropolitan Airport in Louisiana, everything seemed like a typical night. A film crew from WBRZ-TV was present, their cameras ready to capture the arrival of a suspect. Gary Plush, a 38-year-old father, former Air Force sergeant, and then a heavy equipment salesman, stood there. He wore a white baseball cap and sunglasses to avoid recognition. In his hand was a phone, speaking with his close friend Jimmy, but his eyes were fixed elsewhere, as if counting down the moments. Because, besides his phone, Gary carried a .38 caliber revolver, and he was consumed with rage. The rage of a father who had recently learned that his 11-year-old son, Jody Plush, had been abused for months by his karate instructor, Jeffrey Doucette, and even kidnapped once. Jeffrey Doucette, a 25-year-old karate coach, had abducted Jody from his home in Baton Rouge on February 19, 1984, and taken him to a motel in Anaheim, California. After a 10-day search, when Doucette allowed Jody to call his mother, June, the police traced their location. The FBI rescued Jody and arrested Doucette. On the night of March 16, Doucette, handcuffed and flanked by two officers, Mike Barnett and Bud Connor, stepped off the plane and walked through the airport terminal for his court appearance. Gary had learned from a WBRZ employee when and where Doucette would arrive. That's why he was there, with one thought in his mind: revenge. Days earlier, when Jody returned home, Gary had told the media he felt a sense of helplessness and did not know how to deal with the situation. At that moment, the cameras were zoomed in on Doucette, walking slowly in handcuffs beside the officers. Gary held his breath. His hand slowly moved to where the .38 caliber revolver was hidden. He was no longer waiting for justice to be served. He had to take action himself. As Doucette passed by, a deafening shot rang out through the airport terminal, and Doucette collapsed to the ground. Gary was arrested, but later, through a plea deal, was convicted of manslaughter. Judge Frank Saya stated that sending Gary to prison would benefit no one. The court psychiatrist noted that Gary, in that moment, could not distinguish right from wrong, as his rage and pain had driven him into a temporary state of insanity. To those who disagreed with the ruling, Gary said,
If somebody did it to your kid, you do it.
Ultimately, Gary was sentenced to 7 years of suspended imprisonment, 5 years of probation, and 300 hours of community service, which he completed by 1989. Until his death in 2014 following a stroke, Gary maintained he had no regrets and would do it again if given the chance.
Level 3. Unlucky Uber driver. On the night of February 10, 2022, a horrific incident occurred in Pitcairn, Pennsylvania, USA, involving an Uber driver captured by her car's dash cam. Christina Spikusa, a 38-year-old mother of 4, picked up a passenger around 9 p.m., a man wearing a suspicious mask. Calvin Crew, a 24-year-old, displayed odd behavior from the start, responding vaguely to Christina's greetings and questions, though she initially dismissed it. As they neared the destination, a desolate tree-lined road leading to Monroeville, Crew shifted closer to her in the backseat. Too late. Christina grew suspicious. Suddenly, Crew pulled a gun, pressed it to her head, grabbed her ponytail, and ordered her to keep driving.
What are you doing?
This is a gun. Keep driving.
No, it's not. Stop. Come on, man. I got a family. What are you
I got
doing?
a family too. Now drive.
What are you doing?
Drive.
Please stop.
Drive the car, miss.
I have 4 kids. What are you doing?
Despite her attempts to reason with him, pleading that she had a family, the unyielding Crew ignored her, demanding compliance. He took her phones to prevent her from calling for help and noticed the dash cam, shutting it off, ending the footage. Tragically, Christina's body was found 2 days later in the wooded area, with a gunshot wound to the back of her head. Her car was recovered, allowing police to retrieve the dash cam footage and find Crew's fingerprints inside. 5 days later, Crew was arrested, revealed to have attempted to access Christina's banking apps to steal from her. In February 2025, he was convicted of kidnapping, robbery, and murder, sentenced to life without parole. Christina's family and lawyer stated they did not pursue the death penalty, satisfied with the life sentence. Ambush.
July 17, 2013, near Padalpani Waterfall in Maitesal, India. Everything seemed calm and ordinary. This area was a highly popular spot among tourists. It was around 3 p.m. and a family of several members decided to relax by the riverbed near the waterfall, enjoying nature. The waterfall had little water, and the river below was far from deep. The children were playing by the river's rocks. At that moment, no one could have imagined that in just a few minutes, this peaceful place would change completely. The family was still in the river when suddenly a strange sound, like a loud roar, echoed from the valley above. It was as if the river surged, and a massive volume of water rushed toward them with intense speed. A few managed to get out of the water, and since the river wasn't deep, many didn't take it seriously and stayed put. But just seconds later, another wave came, and this time there was no chance to escape. Before anyone could react properly, a colossal wave of muddy water full of rocks and branches poured down from the waterfall. The water filled the dry riverbed with terrifying speed, rushing toward the family. The family, who moments before were laughing and taking photos, was now trapped. This flood was an unexpected disaster caused by sudden rains upstream in the valley. They tried to hold on to each other tightly, clinging to a rock to save themselves. The stronger the water's flow became, the closer they huddled together. After the disaster, local rescue teams with helicopters and boats were dispatched to the area, but it's unclear how many were saved or how many lost their lives. What was clear was that from that family of 5, the father and 2 girls died while the 2 boys were alive. This tragic event remained etched in the minds of those present that day. Now, whenever the distant rumble of rain is heard, fear grips them that another flood might ambush them, endangering their lives and their families' lives.
Child's fall from a building. On November 3, 2022, in Jiaoqing, southern China, a sudden and miraculous incident was captured by CCTV. Li Ming, a young man seen preparing to enter his car, froze when he heard cries nearby. The screams audible in the footage drew his attention upward. Spotting a toddler plummeting from the 2nd floor of a building, Li abandoned his car and sprinted toward the child. With no time to hesitate, he positioned himself beneath the falling boy, arms outstretched, determined to prevent a tragedy. The child crashed into Lee's arms with alarming force, and though Lee couldn't fully catch him, the boy landed without striking his head, cushioned by Lee's effort. The toddler hit the ground, but thanks to Lee's intervention, sustained no serious injuries. Bystanders and the child's family rushed to help, lifting him to safety. Reports confirm the boy suffered no lasting harm and fully recovered. Li Ming, despite a severe muscle strain in his right arm, earned widespread praise online as the video went viral. He later stated that the child's safety was his sole priority, vowing to act again if faced with a similar crisis. His selfless act of beacon of humanity. Level 4. Hostage attempt and a quick-witted cashier. In February 2024, a YouTube video went viral, capturing a tense incident at a store in an East Asian country, recorded by CCTV. The young girl enters the shop and chats with the cashier. A young woman. Behind the girl, a car stops and a suspicious woman wearing sunglasses steps out, watching her closely. While the girl leans against a freezer, talking to the cashier, the stranger lingers outside, trying to appear casual, but keeping the girl in sight. The cashier briefly steps inside, leaving the girl waiting. The stranger seizes the moment, approaching the girl, touching her ponytail, and making small talk about ice cream while gesturing toward the store. The girl responds but seems uneasy, trying to keep her distance. As the cashier returns with the girl's items, the stranger backs off, pacing suspiciously. This pattern repeats. The cashier steps away, the stranger approaches, but fails to gain the girl's trust. The situation escalates when a man who had dropped the woman off earlier returns and opens the car's back door, pretending they're unconnected. It's clear they're accomplices waiting to abduct the girl after her purchase. The cashier, however, turns the tables. While ringing up the items, she notices the suspicious behavior and grows wary. Instead of returning inside after handing the girl her bag, she swiftly follows her, escorting her away from the store. This quick thinking foils the stranger's plan, and they flee in their car. The cashier's alertness and bravery likely saved the girl from a horrific fate. She continues to accompany her, ensuring she reaches home safely. Such incidents targeting children occur worldwide, but few are thwarted by the quick awareness of adults like this cashier. Crane collapse.
On the morning of July 26, 2023, on the busy 10th Avenue, near the intersection with West 41st Street neighborhood, construction workers were immersed in their tasks. A massive crane owned by New York Crane and Equipment Corps was lifting 16 tons of concrete. Everything seemed routine, or at least it appeared that way. Workers moved quickly. The crane operator sat in the cabin, diligently performing their duties. A few workers below were signaling via radio. It was 7:30 a.m., a time when many people were hurriedly heading to work and the surrounding streets were bustling. Suddenly, the operator in the crane's cabin noticed a strange smell, like burning or hot oil. The cabin's monitors began flashing, but before they could act, a small flame erupted from the crane's engine compartment. Some workers around the site initially thought it was a minor issue. Pedestrians on 10th Avenue were just beginning to realize something was wrong. A few stopped and looked up in fear. Their hearts nearly stopped at the sight unfolding before them. The crane was still holding the concrete load, but suddenly its long arm began to tremble, as if the entire structure was buckling under the weight. The operator in the cabin was desperately trying to regain control. They attempted to warn others via radio, but the connection was lost. A terrifying sound erupted from the crane. The supporting cables began snapping one by one. All I heard was a loud boom, construction worker Max Montanez told the Post in the aftermath. Some pedestrians in the street started running. Suddenly, with a deafening crash, the crane's arm broke in half. The 16 tons of concrete, still attached to the cables, plummeted toward the street.
Oh.
The crane's arm slammed into the building across the street at 555 10th Avenue. The building's windows shattered, and pieces of metal and concrete rained down on the street. Dust engulfed the area. Miraculously, the disaster injured only 12 people, and no one lost their life. Reports stated that the fire was likely caused by hydraulic fluid leaking from the engine compartment onto a heated metal plate, igniting the fire on the crane's machine deck. To this day, those who were there still glance nervously at the sky when passing that intersection, as if fearing another metal giant might come crashing down.
Landslide on a road in India.
On September 6, 2021, residents of Himachal Pradesh, India, witnessed one of the most terrifying natural disasters of their lives up close. Landslides are relatively common in India, but in some cases, their sheer magnitude results in the capture of profoundly chilling footage, even for locals accustomed to such events. That day, on a road near the small village of Jori, motorcyclists and drivers were passing through when they suddenly noticed small rocks and soil tumbling down from the mountainside above. People froze in place, pulling out their phones to record the scene from near and far. Everyone expected this to be a minor routine landslide, one they could wait out before continuing their journey. But this time, the situation was far more complex. Some onlookers considered the event so trivial that they stood just a few meters from the falling rocks, confident no real danger threatened them. They quickly changed their minds when, seconds later, an avalanche of massive boulders and dust began pouring down, as if the entire mountain was collapsing. The crowd scrambled to distance themselves from the chaos. Fortunately, according to reports, no one lost their life or was seriously injured in this incident. But, as the video clearly shows, the road was completely buried under thousands of tons of rock and debris, forcing people to turn back.
Level 5. Distraction.
On April 17, 2024, around 8:35 a.m. in the Nkumba area of Kampala, Uganda, a dashcam on the Kampala Expressway captured a terrifying scene. Cars were stuck in traffic waiting behind a red light. Suddenly, a truck veered off course, as if its brakes had failed. The road's steep incline was too much for the truck to handle, and it couldn't stop or control itself. The truck swerved into another lane, crashing into cars stuck in traffic. Within seconds, it completely lost control and slammed into a Mitsubishi RVR. After the disaster, police and rescue teams quickly arrived at the scene. It was determined that Raphael Okoit, a 34-year-old lawyer working at Maldiv Advocates, was in the Mitsubishi RVR and lost his life in the crash. Significant damage was also caused to other vehicles. The police closed the expressway for hours to prevent further chaos. The case is still under investigation. Some believe the driver may have fallen asleep, while others criticize the city's infrastructure, questioning how a truck that heavy could lose control on a slope.
Man engulfed in flames on the highway. On October 18, 2005, a devastating crash on a Sun Valley, California highway led to a nightmarish aftermath. Officers Paul Waymeyer and Jeff Jensen, patrolling Highway 7D, were drawn to a severe collision. But the true horror awaited one of the vehicles involved. Alexis Reynoso, a 22-year-old driver trapped inside his car, was surrounded by flames, desperately needing rescue. The ordeal was captured by a news cameraman who rushed to the scene. Initially, Officer Paul, aided by bystanders, struggled to free Alexis, while Jeff battled the fire with an extinguisher. The car's doors were jammed, and shattering the rear windows proved futile. Despite their efforts, the flames refused to yield, and Alexis remained trapped. The cameraman, racing to nearby vehicles, secured another extinguisher from a bus. Returning, he found the officers and crowd still locked in a frantic struggle. Alexis, unable to move, screamed in terror, pleading for help as the fire crept from the hood toward the cabin, smoke and debris choking the air. Realizing the blaze was unstoppable, the officers and bystanders resolved to forcibly pull Alexis through the window before it was too late. With sheer determination, they succeeded, dragging him free and laying him on the ground for immediate care. Moments after his rescue, the cabin erupted in flames. A mere seconds delay likely costing Alexis his life. Firefighters soon arrived, extinguishing the blaze, and paramedics stabilized Alexis. The quick-thinking officers and courageous civilians transformed a potential tragedy into a dramatic rescue, saving a life against overwhelming odds. Tragic fall of tourist couple at waterfall. On June 2, 2024, a heartbreaking incident occurred at Shiren Gorge in Huangyan, Taizhou, Zhejiang Province, southern China, captured in a viral video. Around 12:30 p.m. on a Sunday, a man and woman, believed to be a couple, were crossing a powerful water current above a waterfall, aided by a rope held by others on both sides. Part of a tourist group exploring the mountainous area. Their attempt to cross went horribly wrong. The woman slipped, losing her balance. Despite struggling to regain control with the rope, she slid closer to the edge of the waterfall. The man, likely her husband, rushed to grab her hand and pull her up, while a third person tried to secure the rope. Her situation worsened, with her head and body submerged under the rushing water. The man clung to her desperately, but his efforts pulled him down too. Multiple people gripped the rope from both sides, straining to hold it as the couple intermittently disappeared under the water. The scene was chaotic, with onlookers screaming in fear and uncertainty gripping everyone. The relentless current threatened to tear the rope, and after a tense struggle, it snapped. The couple, barely visible in the camera frame under the water's force, was swept away and fell. Rescue teams, including firefighters, were dispatched, but heavy rainfall and intensified water flow made the search grueling. Tragically, the bodies of both were later found in the water, turning a scenic outing into a deadly nightmare. Odisha disaster.
On June 2, 2023, around 7 p.m. in the Balasore region of Odisha, India, trains were moving along India's busy railway tracks as usual. The Coromandel Express, packed with ordinary passengers seated in its carriages, was heading toward its destination when, suddenly, it was as if the world exploded. A horrific sound filled the air, and the Coromandel Express, traveling at 128 kilometers per hour, derailed and collided with a freight train parked beside the tracks. Carriages slammed into one another. But the nightmare didn't end there. Just seconds later, the Yeshwanthpur Express, approaching from the opposite direction, crashed into the overturned carriages of the Coromandel Express. Dust and smoke engulfed everything. In that moment, no one knew what had happened to the passengers aboard both trains. Reports stated that a fault in the railway's signaling system caused the disaster. Apparently, a signaling error directed the Coromandel Express onto a secondary track where the freight train was parked. When this collision occurred, no one could prevent the third train's impact. The result of the signaling failure was the loss of 296 lives and over 1,200 injuries. The number of injured was so high that local hospitals quickly became overwhelmed. Subhashish Patra, an ordinary student traveling with his family on the Coromandel Express from Balasore to Bhubaneswar, recounted hearing only the cries of children after the crash. The scene was like a nightmare, with carriages reduced to heaps of twisted metal. Rescue teams and local residents rushed to the site and got to work. Many tried to pull passengers from the wreckage with their bare hands. Reports revealed that the signaling system in many parts of India is outdated, and an anti-collision system called Kavach, which could have prevented this tragedy, was installed on only 4% of railway routes. As a result, they couldn't stop this disaster, and that day, many lost their loved ones due to this failure.
Level 6. Walmart hostage crisis. On June 17, 2013, in a Walmart in Midwest City, Oklahoma, a terrifying hostage crisis unfolded. Sammy Wallace, a 37-year-old man, entered the store, appearing at first like an ordinary shopper. But his actions soon stunned those around him. Spotting a 2-year-old girl in a shopping cart with her mother, Alicia Keating, and 12-year-old sister, Wallace approached, abruptly snatching the child from the cart and clutching her tightly. A convicted felon who had served prison time from 2000 to 2011 in Texas and struggled with mental health issues, Wallace pressing it to the girl's throat while threatening Alicia and nearby shoppers. He handed Alicia his phone, demanding she contact a Dallas officer named Kevin, or he would harm the child. Alicia, overwhelmed with fear, complied to protect her daughter.
He made sure that I saw that knife, and he was talking quietly, and initially I thought he was going to make us come with him and leave, and we were going to have to leave with him. So immediately I panicked, and I just started screaming, please help me, this man has my baby, and I screamed on the top of my lungs for everybody to hear.
Store employees awarded 911, and police soon arrived, deploying 2 officers to negotiate with the erratic Wallace. For 34 tense minutes, he roamed the store, ignoring police pleas, the girl still in his grip. When officers offered him a chair to calm the situation, Wallace refused to engage constructively, his mental state deteriorating. He then issued a chilling ultimatum. He would count to 60, and if his demands weren't met, he would kill the girl. The officers, initially hoping to resolve the crisis peacefully, realized the escalating danger. Officer David Huff, a 20-year veteran with hostage negotiation experience, made a critical decision. As another officer distracted Wallace, Huff approached and fired a single shot to his head, ending the threat. The girl, unharmed, was reunited with her distraught mother, who had feared the worst at the sound of the gunshot. Wallace's failed hostage attempt cost him his life. Huff was one of 13 law enforcement officers given the Public Safety Officer Medal of Valor at a ceremony attended by President Barack Obama and U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch. Huff's certificate, read during the ceremony, praises him for uncommon poise in resolving a dangerous hostage situation. Off the path.
On the night of August 30, 2024, around 10:30 p.m. in Phoenix, Arizona, homes were shrouded in the silence of the night. In one of these simple houses, Marcus Holmberg and Sabrina Rivera, a young couple, were preparing to eat dinner. Their dog was resting on the couch. Everything seemed like an ordinary night when suddenly, a terrifying sound was heard, as if something was hurtling straight toward them, even though they were inside their home. Just seconds later, the entire house shook, followed by what sounded like an explosion. A Ford Mustang, traveling at breakneck speed, crashed into the house, plowing directly into the living room.
Go.
Dust filled the air, and the main wall of the house tore apart out paper. Marcus and Sabrina, in that moment, fought to stay alive and unharmed. The car, lodged in the middle of their living room, belonged to an 18-year-old driver. Police said the driver was likely intoxicated or under the influence of something. The main living room wall was completely destroyed, windows shattered, and even the house's foundation shifted. Marcus, in an interview, said the sound was like a bomb going off. For a moment, I thought it was all over. Marcus and Sabrina were lucky to survive, sustaining only minor cuts and bruises but deeply shaken. The police arrived and arrested the 18-year-old driver, charging them with driving under the influence. The investigation is ongoing, and further details have not been released. The couple's home was destroyed, with repair costs estimated at around $30,000. The main wall, windows, and foundation need to be rebuilt from scratch. A GoFundMe page was set up to help Marcus and Sabrina, allowing people to show sympathy and contribute financially.
Bizarre altercation in Manhattan subway. In August 2019, a strange confrontation unfolded at the 34th Street subway station in Manhattan, New York City, escalating into a violent brawl. 2 passengers, seemingly in a heated argument, are seen in a video, one outside the train, the other inside behind closed doors, still exchanging words. The man outside spits twice through the partially open doors onto the face of the man inside. Thinking he's won the dispute and the train will soon depart, he stands smugly on the platform, but he's gravely mistaken. The man inside, enraged by the disrespect, forces the train doors open with his hands and storms out to confront the spitter. In a fury, he tackles the younger man, throwing him to the ground and pummeling him with punches to avenge the humiliating act. Onlookers watch in shock, unsure how to react. Some try to intervene, but the person filming, surprisingly, encourages them to let the man finish, arguing that the spitter deserved it for his vile act. Eventually, with the younger man lying dazed or unconscious on the platform, the attacker, having vented his rage, grabs his phone and leaves. This brutal fight could have been avoided if either party had de-escalated sooner. The Allison Duckrow tragedy.
On July 31, 2022, in Sydney, Ohio, James Rail, a 22-year-old whose life had unraveled in recent weeks, wandered the desolate streets of the town. His romance with Allison Duckrow, the woman he loved, had ended abruptly, yet James clung to the belief that she was still his. Allison, resolute in her decision, had severed all contact, even blocking his number. But in James's mind, their story wasn't over. A delusion that drove him to a fateful choice that night, one that would forever haunt both their lives. Determined to see Allison, he crept toward her home, unaware that she and her family had returned from dinner. Inside, Allison was with her mother, Donna Duckrow, and her father, Mitchell Duckrow, a 53-year-old man, fiercely protective, who always stood guard over his family. Mitchell sat in the living room, absorbed in the evening news, while Donna moved about the kitchen and Allison lingered in her room. The house hummed with normalcy, but outside, where James prowled, a storm was brewing. James pulled up in his car, consumed by a desperate need to enter the house and confront Allison, perhaps hoping to sway her heart, or driven by a darker impulse that would never come to light. He never made it inside. Stepping from his car, he approached the front door, frantically trying to force it open. Allison, secluded in her room, heard nothing of the commotion, but Mitchell, in the living room, caught an unsettling sound, the door shuddering as if under assault. He rose swiftly, senses sharp, and moved toward the door, armed and ready. As he stepped outside and faced James, 3 deafening shots shattered the night, and James crumpled to the ground. That night, July 31, 2022, James Rail's life ended at Mitchell Duckrow's hands. The police descended on the Duckrow home, arresting Mitchell, who insisted he acted to protect his family. Investigations revealed James had tried to break down the door, a fact corroborated by chilling doorbell camera footage. Allison later disclosed that James's behavior had grown erratic in the weeks prior, even veering into threats. This evidence ultimately led to Mitchell Duckrow's exoneration. Yet Allison, in later interviews, confessed she remains haunted, the specter of that night forever seared into her memory.
Level 7. The house fire tragedy. On May 11, 2025, in South Jordan, Utah, a devastating fire erupted, its harrowing moments recorded by a ring camera inside the home, around 6:30 p.m. On that Sunday, for reasons initially unknown, a loud explosion echoed from a room out of the camera's view, triggering the fire alarm's piercing wail. The Burgoyne family, all present in the house, quickly realized the danger. But the flames and thick smoke pouring from the unseen room left little time to react or attempt to extinguish the blaze. The mother, shouting frantically, guided her children toward the exit. The father, equally desperate, yelled for everyone to evacuate as the fire spread with ruthless speed, engulfing the kitchen where the camera was mounted. Soon, flames and smoke consumed the frame, obscuring the home in a haze of destruction. Miraculously, every family member escaped the inferno in time, but the fire claimed one victim they couldn't save. Callie, their beloved pet cat, was resting upstairs under the parents' bed when the blaze erupted. The chaos unfolded so rapidly that no one could reach her, and she perished. Jody Burgoyne, who ran a home-based business crafting and selling women's handbags, lost her workspace and livelihood to the flames, inflicting significant financial damage.
All baby pictures from my first 2 children, which I didn't have those backed up. I didn't have an iPhone then. So I'm so grateful.
Investigations later revealed the fire's origin, a lithium-ion battery in a scooter, which exploded, sparking the blaze. In interviews, the Burgoyne family expressed profound gratitude for surviving with their lives and loved ones intact, despite losing nearly everything else. They extended heartfelt thanks to their neighbors and community, whose emotional and financial support helped them navigate this ordeal. A GoFundMe page created for the family, aiming to raise $50,000, has reached roughly half its goal, with ongoing donations and messages of encouragement pouring in, fueling their hope to rebuild. Car fire and brave truck driver. On Monday, August 11, 2014, a devastating accident occurred on Interstate 10 near Biloxi, Mississippi, USA. David Fredrickson, a truck driver, was traveling with a friend when a violent crash unfolded meters ahead, captured by his truck's dash cam. A car collided heavily with a fuel tanker, triggering a massive explosion and engulfing the car in flames. Stunned, David braked, and after consulting his hesitant friend, decided he couldn't just watch like other drivers. Grabbing a fire extinguisher from his truck, he approached the burning vehicle. In a later interview, David admitted to a mix of confusion and dread, fearing he'd encounter severely burned victims, a sight he wasn't sure he could handle.
And I pulled the pin, just automatically. I was praying, God, please don't let me have to deal with somebody halfway burned alive screaming. I didn't want to see anything like that.
Thick smoke obscured the scene, amplifying the terror. Undeterred, David reached the car and found an elderly woman driver, her legs broken and trapped, unable to open the door. Using the extinguisher to douse some flames, he tried the driver's door but found it jammed. He managed to open the opposite door and discovered a 1-year-old girl, likely the driver's granddaughter, unharmed in the back seat. David's selfless act inspired others, and several bystanders joined him, rushing to help. David quickly carried the child to safety, while others worked to free the woman. Both were moved to a safe spot away from the now fully engulfed car. Police and firefighters arrived soon after. Had David and the others hesitated, the woman and child might have perished in the flames. Miraculously, no serious injuries were reported, and the incident ended without fatalities. In his interview, David recalled that his hands didn't burn despite handling the fire, as if the flames were hot.
I didn't burn my hands. It wasn't hot. I mean, I do believe that he protected me and protected them.
He believed divine protection guided him to save lives, convinced that the woman and child were also under such care. Fiji Beach.
On November 2, 2023, at 3:45 p.m. at Treasure Island Resort in Fiji, a tourist was holding a camera filming a Eurocopter operated by Island Hoppers, which was flying unusually close. The helicopter was preparing to land, carrying 6 passengers and a pilot who were likely marveling at Fiji's stunning coastline. But in the final moments of landing, the beautiful scene turned grim. The helicopter began to wobble excessively, as if an invisible force was pulling it off course, preventing a safe landing. Suddenly, all that could be heard were screams, a violent crash, and the sound of breaking metal. Tourists in the area scrambled in every direction. Although the helicopter struck trees, no one lost their life. And the passengers emerged alive, but they would never forget that terrifying moment.
Girl rescued from apartment fire. On January 29, 2022, a fire broke out in a building in the Chertonovo district of Moscow, Russia. Irina Yerpurleva, an 18-year-old, was in a 9th floor apartment with her boyfriend, Timur Zakirov, 20, and their university friend, Adil Akhmatsianov, 21, when a short circuit sparked a rapidly spreading fire. The 2 young men quickly decided to escape through the window to the 8th floor unit below, hanging from the ledge and kicking at the lower window. Fortunately, the resident was home, opened the window, and let them in. But Irina, paralyzed by fear and shock, remained trapped above, her life in danger. Unwilling to abandon her, Timur and Adil positioned themselves at the 8th floor window's edge, risking their own lives to save her. They shouted instructions to Irina while balancing precariously to avoid falling from the 8th floor. Onlookers below filmed some screaming in fear as thick black smoke poured from the 9th floor windows. With the fire intensifying, Irina had no choice but to act or burn alive. Gathering her courage, she focused on Timur and Adil, who stood with arms outstretched to catch her. Clutching the window ledge, she lowered herself by her legs. After a tense moment, they successfully grabbed her and pulled her to safety. All 3 escaped the building unharmed, though the men sustained minor burns and cuts on their hands. The fire engulfed the 9th floor unit moments after Irina's rescue, underscoring how close they came to disaster. Any delay could have led to a tragic outcome.